Malik stepped through the sliding glass doors of Vantage Tech's headquarters just before 9 a.m. The lobby was all glass and steel, chilled air humming from vents overhead. Abstract art hung on the walls. White floors gleamed. Everyone looked busy. Malik wasn't dressed for the part. Gray pullover, dark jeans, clean sneakers, no briefcase, no laptop, just a small leather notebook in his hand. His beard was trimmed, his posture upright, but nobody noticed that. The receptionist barely looked up. He waited at the counter for a moment, then cleared his throat. She glanced up, smiled politely, but not really. Deliveries go around back. I'm not making a delivery, Malik said, voice calm. She blinked as if that didn't compute. Oh, you're here for an appointment. Name? He gave it, watched as her fingers moved over the keyboard, slower than they needed to. Another pause. I don't have you on the schedule. Are you sure it's here? He didn't answer, just opened his notebook and held out the printed email. She took it, read it, then checked her monitor again. This time her eyes flickered. Oh, okay. I see it now, she said, her tone shifting slightly. You're here to meet Mr. Jacobs. One moment. She picked up the phone. Malik waited. Across the lobby, a man in a fitted blazer and designer watch glanced over, then looked again. His gaze lingered just a second longer than it should have. Malik noticed. He was used to this. And this was only the beginning. The receptionist hung up the phone. You can have a seat, she said, gesturing to a line of chairs near the wall. Mr. Jacobs will be with you shortly. Malik nodded once and sat. The chair was firm, upholstered in gray fabric, neutral like everything else here. The man in the fitted blazer was still watching him from across the room. Young, mid-30s maybe, clean-shaven, confident, holding a tablet, pretending to scroll. Malik didn't look back. 5 minutes passed, then 10. People walked by, engineers with badges on lanyards, a woman laughing into her AirPods, a man in loafers holding an iced coffee and a sense of entitlement. They glanced at Malik, then kept walking. The receptionist tapped away at her keyboard. She didn't look up again. At 9:17, a tall man in a navy button-up stepped into the lobby. Mr. Jacobs. He glanced around, then walked toward the receptionist. They exchanged a quiet word. Her finger pointed in Malik's direction, subtle but not invisible. Mr. Jacobs hesitated, then approached. Hey, he said, eyes narrowing slightly. Are you Malik? I am. Jacobs offered a quick handshake, barely a shake at all. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Apologies, we weren't expecting. He stopped, recalibrated mid-sentence. Someone without a portfolio. Malik raised an eyebrow. The instructions said not to bring anything, just to observe. Jacobs blinked, clearly trying to reframe whatever thought had been forming. Right, he said. Right? Well, we can talk for a few minutes. This way. He turned quickly, already walking. Malik followed. And the man with the fitted blazer? He was still watching. Not curious anymore. Wary. Like something was off. And he was right. But he had no idea just how far off he was. Mr. Jacobs walked fast, not offering small talk. Malik didn't try to fill the silence. They moved through a narrow hallway lined with glass-walled offices. Everyone inside seemed absorbed. Code on monitors, graphs on screens, conversations that stopped when they passed. The conference room was minimalist. Whiteboard, projector, long table, 8 chairs, nothing personal, no framed achievements, no warmth. Jacobs gestured to a chair. You can sit here. Malik sat. Jacobs remained standing, adjusting the blinds even though the light wasn't harsh. So, Malik, he began. Tone clipped, rehearsed. To be candid, we usually conduct these diversity evaluations a bit differently. I was told this would be more formal. Malik tilted his head slightly. You weren't told much at all. Jacobs chuckled, but it was forced. That's true. My team just said someone would stop by, observe, maybe ask a few questions. I assumed it would be someone from HR or a consultant. You assumed a lot, Malik said calmly. Jacobs stiffened just a little. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he grabbed a marker from the tray beneath the whiteboard and began writing something. Numbers, maybe a schedule. It didn't matter. When he finally turned back around, his smile was more brittle than before. Listen, I'm happy to walk you through our stats, he offered. Diversity metrics, recruiting numbers, internal surveys. We're not perfect, but we're ahead of most. Malik folded his hands on the table. I'm not here to hear your stats. Jacobs blinked. You're not. No. I'm here to see who you are when you think no one's watching. The pause that followed was longer than either of them expected. Jacobs didn't know it yet, but this wasn't his meeting. Not anymore. Jacobs tried to recover. He pulled out a chair across from Malik but didn't sit right away. So, you're not with HR? He asked, voice quieter now. No. Then who exactly are you with? Malik didn't answer immediately. He leaned back slightly, still composed, his eyes fixed on Jacobs. Not confrontational, just watching. Jacobs cleared his throat. Look, I'm sorry if the front desk gave you trouble. We weren't expecting. Someone dressed like me? Malik offered. Jacobs froze. That's not what I meant. Malik said nothing, just waited. Jacobs sat down. Finally, he looked down at his hands, then back up. It's just, when people come from our investors, they usually send someone more senior looking. What does senior looking mean to you? Malik asked. Not accusatory, just curious. Jacobs opened his mouth, closed it. Malik let the silence stretch. I see, Malik said at last. So far, I've been misidentified by the receptionist, ignored in your lobby, and judged for my clothes by the hiring manager. Jacobs shifted in his seat. I didn't judge. You assumed, Malik interrupted, still calm. Assumption is judgment in shorthand. Jacobs leaned forward slightly. Okay, maybe I did. But you have to understand. I don't. Malik cut in firmer now. That's the problem. Jacobs looked away. Across the hall, through the glass, a young intern walked past with a tablet in her hands. She glanced into the room, saw Malik, hesitated, then kept walking. Malik noticed. He noticed everything. And the real reason he was here, it hadn't come up yet, but it would, soon. The air in the room had cooled. Jacobs tapped the end of his marker against the table, an old nervous habit. His usual rhythm, speak, lead, impress, was gone. Now he was reacting, slower, less certain. Malik stayed still. Eventually, Jacobs tried again. All right, look, let's reset, he said, voice thin but trying to regain footing. If you're here on behalf of our investors, we'd be happy to walk you through our DEI roadmap. Transparency's important to us. Malik didn't nod, didn't smile. He opened his notebook and flipped to a page. No logo, no official letterhead. Just handwritten notes. Bullet points. I'm not here to hear your roadmap, he said. Jacobs waited. I've already reviewed your numbers. Your hiring stats. Your attrition rates. Your anonymous feedback forms. I know which departments have diversity problems, which managers trigger the most exit interviews, and where complaints disappear. Jacobs blinked. But you said. I said I came to observe. I didn't say I came to learn. Something shifted in Jacobs' face. His back straightened a little. His eyes sharpened. You're not an auditor. No. You're not internal. No. Then who exactly? Before he could finish, the conference room door opened. A woman in her 40s entered, holding a slim laptop. Business suit. Polished. She saw Malik, stopped, then smiled wide. There you are, she said. Mr. Mitchell, we're ready for you upstairs. Jacobs looked between them. Mr. Mitchell? Malik stood, calmly closed his notebook, and extended a hand. Jason Malik Mitchell, he said. Strategic advisor to the board at Westbridge Capital. Lead on the inclusivity audit for all portfolio companies valued over $500 million. Jacobs' mouth parted slightly, but nothing came out. Malik's handshake lingered just long enough. Then he let go, and followed the woman out. Jacobs remained seated, his hands still on the table, like he'd just realized the real interview had already happened, and he hadn't passed. The elevator ride was quiet. The woman beside Malik, Elena, didn't make small talk. She didn't need to. She knew why he was there, and she knew what he just walked through. When the doors opened, they stepped into a very different floor. No open layout here. No glass cubicles. Just silence, soft carpets, polished wood accents. Executive offices lined the hallway, their names etched on brushed metal plaques. The receptionist on this floor stood the moment she saw them. Mr. Mitchell, she greeted. Her voice was steady, respectful. They're waiting in Conference B. Malik nodded once. Inside, 5 people were seated at the long table. VPs, directors, the CFO. They rose when he entered. "Mr. Mitchell," said the CFO, extending a hand. "We appreciate you making time." Malik took the seat at the head of the table. No fanfare, just quiet authority. "I spent my morning downstairs," he said, without opening his notebook. Several faces stiffened. "I wasn't there as myself. I didn't use my title. I watched. I listened. I waited." A beat passed. He leaned forward. "The issue at Vantage isn't your numbers. You've hired enough, promoted a few, ticked the boxes." He paused. "The issue is your culture." Silence. Elena sat in the corner, typing notes. Malik looked around the table. "Not judging, just measuring. What I experienced from your receptionist and your hiring manager wasn't rare," he said. "It was practiced." The room was still. No one asked what he meant. They knew. Malik flipped open his notebook, turned to a page marked only with a single name. Jacobs. He underlined it once. Slowly. The meeting was just beginning, but decisions were already being made. The CFO cleared his throat. "We're obviously committed to improvement, Mr. Mitchell. And we've made strides." Malik looked up. Just once. The CFO stopped talking. "I'm not here for commitments," Malik said quietly. "I'm here to assess alignment between what you say and what you are." He let that sit, then turned to the woman seated 2 chairs down, VP of People Operations. Nervous. Hands clasped tight in her lap. "You've conducted bias training twice in the last year," Malik said. "Mandatory attendance, optional engagement. Post-session surveys show a drop in trust among employees of color. Why?" She hesitated. "We thought the training would help normalize dialogue. And instead, it made some people feel targeted. Others felt exempt." Malik nodded. "That's what happens when you treat culture as a checklist." Another silence followed. He looked around the table again. "Culture is not a slide deck. It's not a recruiting tagline. It's how your receptionist decides who matters. It's how your managers scan a room. It's what your employees assume before you say a single word." No one spoke. Malik turned a page. "Let's talk about hiring pipelines," he continued. "Why do resumes with traditionally black names require more years of experience to get a callback?" The HR lead swallowed hard. "We're reviewing our screening software." "Your software doesn't work alone." He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. "The behavior I experienced this morning wasn't about one person. It was a reflection." Elena glanced up from her notes. Malik's voice lowered. "And if reflection makes you uncomfortable, good. That means you're still capable of change." Across the table, someone finally exhaled. They hadn't realized they'd been holding their breath. But the real question wasn't what Malik had found. It was what he was about to recommend. Malik closed his notebook. "I'm not going to recommend a task force," he said plainly. "Not another workshop. Not a panel discussion with no follow-through." The room was motionless. "I'm recommending intervention." A few heads turned sharply. "Your leadership team is not aligned. Your gatekeepers operate on instinct, not policy. And your brand of inclusion ends at the elevator." The CFO straightened. "Respectfully, Mr. Mitchell, our board will want something actionable." Malik looked at him, calm as ever. "This is actionable," he replied. "Step 1, Jacobs is to be removed from hiring responsibilities immediately. He lacks the judgment required to identify bias in himself, let alone others." No one challenged it. No one could. Step 2, your frontline staff, especially client-facing roles, must undergo recertification. Not just in procedures, in presence, in what it means to represent a company before a customer speaks. He glanced toward Elena, who nodded silently. It was all being documented. Step 3, every team lead will complete an anonymous feedback review by direct reports. And those reports will inform their eligibility for advancement. The VP of People shifted in her chair, but didn't speak. Malik let the silence stretch. "Optional change is cosmetic," he said. "Mandated change is structural." He stood, slowly, not rushing. The weight of what he'd said filled the room. "I'll file my formal report to the board this week. If you implement, you keep your investor. If you stall," he left the sentence hanging. They knew the rest. Malik turned to go. Just before he reached the door, he paused and glanced back. "You should know," he added, voice softer now. "What happened in your lobby this morning? That wasn't the first time for me." He looked at each of them, not accusing, just tired. But it needs to be the last time here. Then he walked out, and the room stayed quiet long after he'd gone. Back in the lobby, nothing had changed. The receptionist was still behind the desk, typing, not noticing Malik as he passed. But someone else noticed. The man in the fitted blazer, still lingering, still pretending to scroll his tablet, watched Malik walk toward the exit. His expression had shifted from wary to something else. Concern, maybe, or curiosity. Malik didn't acknowledge him, just kept moving. Outside, the morning sun had sharpened, reflected hard off the glass facade of Vantage Tech. He stepped into the quiet heat of the sidewalk, pulling his sunglasses from his pocket, put them on, walked. Behind him, inside the building, the receptionist finally glanced up, saw him leaving, frowned. Something clicked. She picked up the phone. "Hey, who was that guy? The one in the hoodie?" A pause. The voice on the other end said something that made her hand fall slowly from her face. Her eyes widened. She didn't speak again. Across the lobby, the man with the tablet watched her reaction, watched the pieces fall into place. He looked toward the glass doors where Malik had just disappeared. No press, no business card, no confrontation, just a man who walked in, watched, and changed everything, without ever raising his voice. The boardroom on the 27th floor of Westbridge Capital was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Malik sat at the end of the long table. Elena across from him, laptop open, cursor blinking. A copy of his handwritten notes had been typed and shared in advance, but no one spoke yet. 3 board members were present, 2 men, 1 woman, all reading, highlighting, processing. Finally, the woman, gray suit, sharp eyes, spoke first. "This isn't just a culture gap," she said. "This is a leadership blind spot." Malik nodded once. "Exactly." She looked up from the report. "And your recommendation is firm?" "Yes," Malik said. "Not disciplinary for optics, structural for accountability." One of the men leaned back in his chair. "You think they'll push back?" "They already are," Malik replied. "But not out loud, yet." He let the words rest. "They've been performing inclusion like a script, but underneath it's still hierarchy by assumption. People are being measured before they speak." The man nodded slowly. "And Jacobs?" Malik didn't hesitate. "He'll resist, maybe even retaliate. But if you leave him in place, you send a message louder than any diversity statement." The room fell quiet again. Elena clicked to the next page of the presentation, revealing a breakdown of the morning's observations. Entry assumptions. Lobby behavior. Managerial demeanor. Response under pressure. It was all there. Not dramatic, just undeniable. The woman in the gray suit leaned forward. "We've invested heavily in Vantage," she said. "But the kind of culture they're fostering isn't sustainable." Then she looked at Malik. "Are you willing to walk them through this?" Malik met her gaze. "No," he said simply. "They need to walk themselves through it, or they'll never own the change." She held his stare, then nodded. That was the answer she wanted. Not hand-holding. Standards. Downstairs at Vantage Tech, Jacobs sat alone in his office, blinds drawn halfway. A half-finished cup of coffee sat cooling on the edge of his desk. The email had come 15 minutes ago. Subject line, temporary reassignment of hiring duties. It wasn't a firing. Not yet. But it wasn't subtle either. Jacobs had read it twice, then a third time, then just sat staring at it. Across the hall, people moved like usual, carrying laptops, ducking into meetings, but a few glanced into his office longer than normal. One lingered a moment too long. He closed his laptop, stood. The silence in his office felt heavier than it should have. He wasn't used to this kind of stillness. Usually he filled it with energy, with meetings, with direction. Now it was just pause. A soft knock. He turned. It was Tessa, the young recruiter on his team. She stepped in, hesitating. "Hey," she said gently. "I heard." Jacobs tried to smile. It didn't work. "Yeah, it's a lot." Tessa looked down, then back at him. "People are talking. Some are, honestly, not surprised." He flinched. "But I am," she added, voice lower. "I didn't think it would catch up to you like this." Jacobs sat back down, slowly. "I didn't think it was that bad," he said quietly. "I didn't mean." She cut him off gently. "You didn't think. That's what everyone's saying." He looked at her. Really looked. "I thought I was good at reading people." Tessa shrugged, a little sadness in her eyes. Maybe you were just reading the ones who looked like you. She left before he could reply. Jacobs didn't stop her. For the first time, he wasn't sure what he'd say. Later that afternoon, Elena returned to Vantage Tech. Not to hold hands, not to soften the blow, just to deliver the message. She met with the executive team in the same glass-walled conference room where Malik had sat hours earlier. Jacobs wasn't present. She brought no slides, no prep materials, just clarity. "I'm here to confirm the board's response," she said, standing at the head of the table. "Mr. Mitchell's observations have been reviewed. His recommendations are now expectations." The VP of Operations nodded, slowly. The HR lead glanced down at her notes, then back up. "So this isn't optional." "No," Elena said. "It never was. You just weren't being held to it." A murmur moved across the room. Someone asked what role Jacobs would have going forward. "That depends on him," Elena answered. "But hiring is no longer under his control, and his behavior is being formally reviewed." The CFO rubbed his temples. "He's been here for 7 years. And in those 7 years," Elena said calmly, "you've had 6 formal complaints, 3 anonymous reports of coded bias, and 1 diversity hire who quit within 90 days. The room went still. "We're not asking for perfection," she continued. "We're asking for integrity, for systems that prevent harm instead of rationalizing it after the fact." No one disagreed. They couldn't. Before she left, Elena turned back one last time. "Mr. Mitchell won't be returning. His job was to uncover the truth, not to manage your reaction to it." She paused. "And now, that part is yours." She walked out, and for the first time in a long time, the executive floor of Vantage Tech felt very, very quiet. In a quiet cafe 3 blocks from Vantage Tech, Malik sat by the window, a single espresso untouched in front of him. His notebook was closed. There was nothing left to write today. He watched people pass by, engineers, interns, people in suits, others in t-shirts and sandals. The city didn't change for moments like this. It just kept moving. But something had shifted. He'd seen it. The way Jacob's posture broke under accountability. The way Elena delivered consequences with precision, not apology. The way silence became uncomfortable for the right reasons. His phone buzzed. A message from the board chair. "Report acknowledged. Moving forward with full implementation. Thank you." Malik locked the screen without replying. Some wins didn't need a response. He thought back to the receptionist's face as he walked out earlier that day, how the color drained when she realized who he was, how quickly her politeness had arrived, too late to matter. She hadn't said a word, and that, Malik thought, was the truest moment of the entire day. Because respect given only after revelation isn't respect at all. It's recognition of power. He wasn't interested in that. He took a sip of his espresso, finally, looked back out the window. 1 floor down from where it had all started, 2 junior employees stepped outside the building, laughing, relaxed, 1 black, 1 white. They didn't know what had happened upstairs. Not yet, but maybe they'd feel the difference, soon. The next morning, Malik's inbox held dozens of messages. Most were formal board confirmations, policy drafts, follow-ups from legal. But one subject line stood out. "Yesterday, from Jacobs Peter." Malik clicked it open. "Mr. Mitchell, I've replayed that morning in my head more times than I want to admit. I made assumptions. I spoke before thinking. I treated you the way I've probably treated a lot of people I never saw clearly. No excuses, just facts. I understand why I've been removed. I probably deserve more. What I didn't understand until yesterday is how deep the gap is between how I think I lead and how others actually experience me. I'm not asking for leniency. I'm not trying to save face. I just wanted to say it directly. I was wrong. And if you ever think it's worth a conversation, I'll show up. Not to defend, just to listen. Peter Jacobs." Malik stared at the screen. He didn't smile. Didn't frown either. He read the message twice. Then again. He didn't reply. Not yet. Because growth isn't proven in apology. It's proven in silence, in what someone chooses to do when they're no longer being watched. He closed the laptop and let the message sit, just like Jacobs would have to. 3 weeks later, a quiet shift began to take root at Vantage Tech. No press releases, no headlines, but things changed. The receptionist now greeted every visitor the same way. Name first, not appearance. She stood when they approached. She used the word sir with a different kind of weight. The man in the fitted blazer? His name was Aaron. He stopped pretending to scroll and started speaking up, twice correcting a colleague who interrupted a junior analyst mid-sentence. Tessa, the young recruiter, pushed for blind resume screenings. The leadership team approved it, quietly, no resistance. And Jacobs? He stayed, demoted, not to punish but to face what he'd ignored. He no longer led hiring. He shadowed team meetings, attended bias training without being asked. No LinkedIn post, no defense, just presence. He spoke less, listened more. And Malik? He didn't return, didn't need to. His work had never been about staying. It was about making it impossible to stay the same. Back at his apartment, he marked the Vantage report complete and filed it in a folder labeled Culture, Phase 1. Then he turned to the next page. Another company, another lobby, another first glance that would say too much. He didn't sigh. He didn't brace. He just picked up his notebook and got ready to be underestimated again. The work wasn't over, but that was the point.